What's up, everybody? Reed Wallach here, joined as always every Tuesday with Cody Williams. This is Stacking the Box College Football Edition. We are finally here, Cody. College football playoff bracket. No more me writing in my sheet here next to me and sharing it. We got the real bracket, the final bracket. We can now talk about the college football playoff games. We could talk about bowl season, the fallout, everything that comes with it. Cody, how was your championship weekend, and what are your first thoughts on the bracket?
Championship weekend got off to a slow start, but we got some bangers to end it, man.
Yeah.
Starting at the SEC championship, those last three Power Four games were something special, and that was a lot of fun. With the bracket, you know what, man? I'm happy to be proven wrong. I was preaching all week, writing and other podcasts and stuff like that. If SMU loses this game, and I think you're on the same boat, SMU loses this game, even if it's close, I still thought Alabama was going to get that last spot. So the fact that we got SMU in here, I think that's a good thing. It's a good sign for the health of the college football playoff. I think that we're not going to be devaluing these conference championship games, that we're not going to penalize a loser in a conference championship game, especially one that lost close and frankly, got a little bit of bad luck with a big kick return that led to one play and then a long field goal to knock them off.
Yeah, I think we could start right there with the bracket and start almost from the back where SMU does take the last spot away from Alabama. They do make the field. SMU, the overall 11 seed, taking on Penn State, the 6 seed. Alabama, the first team left out of the field after SMU loses to Clemson in the ACC championship game. Where I was nervous was during the third quarter, where it seemed like Clemson was going to get to a double-digit victory. And it also was the optics of how SMU fell behind. Definitely a bit of sticker shock, I think, going into the game. First quarter, first drive, third play, strip sack, easy Clemson touchdown. They dig themselves a 2-score, 3-score deficit. I was a bit nervous that the way the game was trending, they were going to be left out. But SMU, who I thought was the better team over 60 minutes and probably should have won, I think they did enough the committee couldn't keep them out.
No, 100%. I mean, it was definitely oh God, the moment's too big for the first quarter and a half of that game. And like you said, they got into a hole, but they dug themselves out. And I think it's a credit to the quality of this SMU team and why we've been preaching that this SMU team needs to be taken seriously for as long as we have, because they were the better team than Clemson throughout that. And yes, we both lost our side on that bet because we were both on SMU -2.5. But I felt as the game went on, I felt better and better about that wager because it looked right. We just got into a bad game script from it.
Yeah, I would say, looking back at last year, how Alabama got in over Florida State, there was at least some sort of excuse that the committee could sit on, where FSU was clearly much worse without their starting quarterback, Jordan Travis. Whereas this one, the arguments just didn't really stack up, in my opinion. I also think it's kind of ironic, everyone talking about, oh, well, Alabama's not going to schedule a difficult schedule anymore, and SMU can, so they have a similar strength of schedule as SMU. Alabama's losses came in conference, so
SMU also had a stronger non-conference schedule, in my opinion.
Yes, 100%. Their one loss came to a ranked BYU team.
Yeah, and they beat a TCU team that was bowl eligible. The arguments from Alabama fans were driving me insane because
they were very misguided.
Yeah, it didn't make a lick of sense, and one of the things that also frustrated me is on the ESPN broadcast of the ACC championship game, because they were having that debate during the broadcast of the game as well before we even got to the end result. They kept flashing top 25 record, and after SMU lost the game, they were 0-2. Alabama was 3-1 in those games. I was like, okay, let's look outside the top 25 and talk about records there, because SMU didn't lose any of those games. Alabama lost 2 of them.
Yeah, I think there obviously needs to be things that change, and we could talk about the bracket in a second, but things need to change, and this is still kind of a learning on the fly type thing. But I do think that while they shouldn't take too many things from the NCAA tournament selection process, there are some different ways that the resumes are compared in college basketball. Obviously a much bigger sample size, but quad 1, quad 2 wins, quad 3. I think using the top 25 is a bit arbitrary, and it almost does a disservice to both sides. It depends on which argument you're talking, but I don't know if it necessarily gets you to the final answer better. Whereas, why don't we break up a little bit better? There's 134 teams. Why not go it's not a perfect example, but like top 50, top 100, top 150. I know you're a little off there, but something like that where you break it into threes as opposed to just the top 25. That's kind of an arbitrary cutoff.
No, 100%, especially because the top 25 that they're referencing, they made the poll.
Exactly.
So it's super arbitrary because you can say Boise State has 2 top 25 wins because you left UNLV ranked in the top 25 in the final rankings. It's completely arbitrary. There needs to be a little bit better process. And I think one of the things you're also alluding to with the NCAA tournament and March Madness is the idea of these automatic buys and the conference champions being the automatic buys, because I do agree that conference champions, they should be rewarded and have the opportunity to get into the playoff. But if you look at the NCAA tournament in basketball, they're not assured any seed. Winning your conference tournament doesn't assure you any type of seed, any type of favorable treatment, even by the way the bracket is constructed. And I think that you look at Boise State and you look at Arizona State, who 2 good teams, and they're fully deserving to be in the college football playoff. Their seeding is a little incongruent with what it probably should be. If it was just seeding based on where you are in the final rankings, I think that would make a lot more sense. Although I'm sure it would piss a lot of people off that it was the 2 participants in the SEC championship game and the 2 participants in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I would say in terms of bracket changes, I agree. Automatic bids should be a thing. Buys, maybe not as much. I think a compromise would be if you don't get a buy, let's say in this case, Boise State and Arizona State, you may not get the buy, but you automatically get to host a game. So almost bring it back one step from the buy, bring it back one where you could still host a game. It's on you're the conference champ, you get to host, but you're not necessarily earning the buy. So in this case, Boise would be the 5 in this case.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you want to just seed them anyway, but Boise just gets to host whatever game they're ranked, I guess that would be a little unfair. But Boise has the 5, Arizona State is the 6. Maybe flip-flop them with Penn State and Texas in this case. I think that could be a fair compromise where you're still rewarding conference champs, but not maybe too much.
No, I like that as well. And I also think one of the other big talking points coming out of the bracket that I think that would help solve a little bit, at least to some degree, was you look at Oregon. Oregon has one of the toughest paths to win a national championship, not being rewarded. And I think some people like Joel Klatt were out here banging that drum a little too hard. If you're the best team in the country, go win the games. That's still what I'm going to come down to at the end of it. But you do deserve some reward. The number 1 overall seed in the NCAA. I think your point about taking lessons from the NCAA tournament in basketball, I think makes a lot of sense for what the College Football Playoff Committee needs to do moving forward, because you look the number 1 overall seed needs to be rewarded with ostensibly the easiest path. Now, that's not always the way it works out, but by their metrics, that's what the NCAA tournament tries to do when they create that region.
Yep.
And so the fact that we need to take lessons from that, the fact that Oregon has to play the winner of Ohio State and Tennessee, 2 teams that could very conceivably beat Oregon, is not it's not congruent with Oregon being the only undefeated team in the country.
I would say another change that could happen, and tough to do this year especially, but you see, because my only pushback is easiest path and stuff, and someone was not arguing, but having a conversation with me saying that, well, you need to put the best teams in. Alabama's a better team than SMU, so you need to put them in. Every sport, teams benefit from easier schedules and fluky things, and you're probably going to see this year, I wouldn't say it's a lock, but it's possible, a team like Notre Dame or Penn State from the right side of the bracket, when you look at it, you're going to face a Georgia team that's potentially, likely, probably on their backup quarterback. So the right side of the bracket is only getting easier, but these are things you can't necessarily plan on, and you can't say, okay, well, this happened this year, we need to change it moving forward. This was just how the run out of the season went more than anything. So I think people making sweeping changes off this year in terms of team quality and stuff, not the process, but in terms of, well, we need the best teams in, or we need this in, and we need that. No, I think every year is unique. And I think that's what makes this year, hey, Bama got a bad run out. It happens. And Notre Dame is going to benefit because they, if they take care of Indiana, they're going to play a potentially shorthanded Georgia team. Still got to win the games. But I do think that I don't want to get lost in some of the nuances of it, but there are some things that, hey, this is the first year we're doing it. Clearly some changes need to be made. Also, in just conferences in general, they need to bring back divisions. Like, there's a lot of things that need to change. Some I agree with, some I don't agree with.
No, I'm with you. I don't think that anything about like the teams that are in the field needs to be changed. Like, I think that's kind of what you're pointing to with like the idea of like Alabama being, you know, a better team than SMU or a better team than in Indiana and deserving to be in because of that. I don't think the selection process itself needs to like, or the teams that were selected are the problem in this. I think it's just how things shook out with the buys, with the seeding, and how everything sorted out. Like, I think that's where we need to go to the beta testing stage and start to see like what works better than what we have here, because I'm excited for the college football playoff, but I think looking at the bracket, one of my takeaways is definitely like, this is an imperfect product that we're going to be putting out there.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of Mickey Mouse type comments coming from whoever comes out of the right side, in my opinion. But ultimately, I don't see much separating these teams. So this is, look, again, a few results change. The bracket looks totally different. This is what we're set with, and this is how we're going to go. So let's talk, before we move on and talk about the bowl games, let's briefly talk about the bracket itself. What were some of your takeaways, Cody? What did anyone jump out to you with a particularly nice path? We're going to talk college football playoff. We're going to do a full deep dive on the first round games next week, but just some macro takeaways.
I mean, you've already hit on one, and I think I would go with the other team on that side of the bracket that I think is in a really advantageous spot. Notre Dame and Penn State are in really good spots right now. And I also think that I feel differently about Penn State coming out of the Big Ten championship game than I did going into the Big Ten championship game. We both were on the under that was cooked by halftime, so that was a lot of fun to watch happen.
Not great.
But not great for us. But hey, you know, you live and learn, I guess. But even though Penn State lost that game, I came out of it feeling way better than I have the entire season about Penn State, quite frankly. The fact that the offense was able to reach a level that I didn't know that they were capable of under James Franklin in a big game. The defense, yes, the defense let them down. But how often is a defense with that talent going to be let down that much? And how often are they going to be playing in Oregon, especially on that side of the bracket? Like, Penn State's path, if they play the way they did in the Big Ten championship game, you're going to beat SMU. You're going to beat Arizona State. And then you're left with probably Notre Dame or Georgia. I think both of those teams are flawed. Obviously, with Georgia with a backup quarterback and Notre Dame with a one-dimensional offense and missing their best cornerback in Benjamin Morrison, like, things set up well for Penn State. And just as similarly, Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a very good football team. Yes, they have the loss to Northern Illinois, but they played like a very good football team since then. You get an Indiana team who we saw what happened when they went up against the highest in competition against Ohio State. They got their doors blown off. They got out physical, and they just got outmanned. Notre Dame can absolutely do that, particularly in the trenches. So, like, I look at that side of the bracket, and I think that Notre Dame and Penn State are in a really favorable position. On the opposite end of that, Ohio State and Oregon might be screwed, man. This is going to be a tough draw for them.
Yeah. My takeaway is you can talk me into like 7 or 8 teams winning the national championship, which 100%. Is pretty cool to think about now that we're here. Because I know, Cody, you know, I was like pretty anti-expansion for some of the macro things. But now that we're finally here and we can talk about the games and we don't have to do all the hand-wringing, I mean, I could see a lot of these games going in different directions. And I think I think there's a world where you could tell me 8 teams win the national championship, but I've decided like I can't rule anything out.
Let me ask you this. Who would you rule out if you're thinking 8 teams? Who are the 4 you're ruling out?
Clemson.
Okay.
SMU.
Okay.
Boise State. And like, I guess Arizona State.
Yeah, and I think that's where I would land as well. And like, maybe Arizona State, I think it's proper that you had hesitation with them more so than you did the other 3. But like, I'm right there with you. I think those 4 teams are probably, but I think it's also indicative of this college football season that we've seen, though. Like, it's been a team where it's like, is anyone actually great? And maybe Oregon is actually great, but I'm still not entirely convinced that's the case. But when there's no great teams, then it's anyone's game, and it becomes very matchup dependent. And like, you know, I mentioned Oregon, like, yes, just in terms of the quality of teams that they could potentially face, it's a really tough draw. But in terms of matchup base, it could be really bad. Like, whoever wins the Ohio State-Tennessee game, Oregon's big issue for me right now isn't Dylan Gabriel. It's not the offense, obviously. It's their run defense. And what do Ohio State and Tennessee do extremely well? They run the football. Yep. So, like, that's going to put Oregon on their heels. So, like, I think like it really comes down to matchups, and I think that's why there's such an incongruency between the two sides of the bracket.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Arizona State, I think, actually, for a Cinderella run, got a pretty good draw.
Mm-hmm.
I doubt it comes together, over like the course of the playoff. But that's why, like, that was one where I was like, like I can see a world, but not a very likely one. Whereas, like, Indiana, who I think is obviously they're the next team to scratch off. I think there's some avenues of beating Notre Dame, and then all of a sudden it's a banged up Georgia team. Next thing you know, you're in the semifinal, and who knows what could happen. So I think as the year has continued to progress, I've just started saying anything could happen, and I don't have any strong, like, I'm not anchoring myself that like this team can't do it, this team can, this can, I think I've kind of opened up myself to any scenario, and I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Indiana and their path, like, okay, I know I just sung Notre Dame's praises, but this is also a team that just allowed 35 to USC. I think Indiana can absolutely score in this Notre Dame team and throw on them without Morrison, because I think, like, they haven't faced many teams since Morrison went out that can take advantage of having a weakened secondary. So if you get past Notre Dame, you get to go into a shorthanded Georgia team. We don't know what that's going to look like. One of my hot takes is that it might actually be the best thing for Georgia that Carson Beck's not playing, and that they're going to simplify the offense around a dual threat quarterback. Like, I don't know, man. Stetson Bennett won 2 national championships. Maybe that's actually just the secret sauce to get Georgia going. But it does make that matchup easier for Indiana than it otherwise would have been. And then let's say Arizona State does clip an SMU or a Penn State in that quarterfinal game. Like, Arizona State wins one game. Indiana and Arizona State are not that differently in terms of the level of athlete they're going to be putting out on the field. So, like, that's a path right there for Indiana to get to the national championship game.
Well, Arizona State would play Texas Clemson, right?
Maybe. Hold on. I might be missing.
Because Arizona State's the 4. They should.
You're right. I apologize.
No, you're good.
Boise State. Let's say Ashton Genty has an otherworldly game, rushed for 300 yards all over Penn State or SMU in that game. Like, it's entirely possible. Like, I don't know. There's so much that could happen. And I'm excited. If you can't tell.
I'm very excited, but let's not give away too much, because, again, next Tuesday, first round deep dives into all 4 college football playoff first round matchups. So for this episode, we are going to run through all the bowl games, because there are like 30 something games, and we want to give you picks and words on every single one. And I have to hold down my crown after a glistening performance last season. Bowl games through December 27th coming right up. And then we're going to do next week, first round games and further bowl stuff as we move through the holiday season. But before we do that, we have to tell you about our great sponsor. That's, of course, Underdog Fantasy. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes this football season. Which players are going off, which ones are ice cold. Make your entries in just a few taps and turn your sports opinions into real money. Join over 5 million fans that are already playing on Underdog. With their pick'em game, you could win money by making entries with your favorite players. Underdog is the best place to play as champions. So sign up today and deposit now using promo code Stacking the Box, name of this fine program, to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. I am going to go with one of my favorite player props in the the last regular season game of the season, Army Navy, of course. Let's go with Heisman snub, Bryson Daly, to have higher than half a touchdown pass. Low total, only 39.5, but Daly has shown he could throw the ball. I think if they get close, we might see a little fake the run, pull it back, tight end up the seam, touchdown. So we'll go Bryson Daly at plus money to throw a touchdown pass over at Underdog Fantasy. You could ride that bet by signing up using the promo code in the link description below, and use the code Stack in the Box to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 HOPE line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY, or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Underdog Fantasy, promo code Stack in the Box.
Wonderfully done. Absolutely beautiful read.
Oh, thank you. So we finished our regular season stuff on pretty much a tie the last like 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Both under 500. It wasn't pretty, but we end up at a deadlock. Just neither one of us could seem to get ahead of the other. So we now move into bowl season. We're going to get one pick for each game. I'm sure a bunch of our picks will be blown up due to opt-outs and everything. But as we're recording, we're going to give our best assessment on each game. Again, we're going to run through pretty quick. We're not going to give like a full deep dive into some of these as we get later in the bowl season. We have some more clarity on who's playing and stuff, maybe get a little bit more in depth, but a lot of games, a lot to get to. Cody, let's start. Saturday, we actually do have a bowl after the Heisman announcement. It's the Salute to Veterans Bowl. Oh, Western Michigan versus South Alabama. Some early interest on the under and Western Michigan. I think some of that has to do with Gio Lopez getting banged up in the regular season finale. Where are you at in this one?
Yeah, I'm not worried about Gio Lopez getting banged up because I'm taking South Alabama first half -4.5. I think that with the Lopez injury, I don't think we see him really pulled back early in this game. I think that we see him in the South Alabama offense kind of unleash the Kraken as quickly as possible and try to get out to a lead in this game. This Western Michigan defense is not particularly good. And I think that if Gio Lopez was at full strength, that I would be more inclined to pretty easily take the South Alabama side. But I think they get out to a lead early and then they just, protect them for next year, make sure something serious doesn't happen. But I like the first half -4.5 for this one. I think that I'm protecting myself against the Broncos adjusting in the second half if they do realize that Lopez is a little compromised. But I trust the South Alabama offense and its explosiveness to get us home in the first half.
Yeah, I don't mind the look on South Al first half. Tempe Kids is with you saying South Alabama blowout. I went for the over.
Mm-hmm.
South Alabama, explosive offense. I know Fluff Bothwell is in the transfer portal. But actually, Bullock is their leading rusher, and he's expected to play. They have a 1,000-yard receiver in Pritchett. So even if it is Davenport, the backup, I still think South Alabama can hit explosive against this Western Michigan defense that has really struggled all year. And on the other side, it is a bowl game. South Alabama hasn't been immune to letting up points. So with some questions on the South Al side, I went for the over because I just see kind of a loose game where points go on the board. So I took the over 57.5. I don't hate your look at all.
No, I like the over as well. Like I don't fully understand the love for the under. Whether or not Gio Lopez is healthy, I think the South Alabama team has proven that like they have the weapons to score and score explosively, score quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's in big place. Western Michigan they struggled down the stretch of the season, but it was one of the more explosive MAC offenses. So I do think we could see some points go up on the board. Next up, Frisco Bowl, Memphis, West Va. Memphis, Seth Hennigan, his last game in college, one of the leading passers in the country, take on a West Va team looking for a new coach, potentially Rich Rodriguez, coming home, bring the prodigal son home to Morgantown. Early interest on Memphis. They are now a 2.5-point favorite, total 56.5. Cody, where are you looking in this one?
Well, since it is Seth Hennigan's last game, and since Seth Hennigan has loved an over throughout his Memphis tenure, let's go for it again. Over 56.5, baby. Let's go for it. I look at this game, and you look at the portal opt-outs that we've already seen from West Virginia. Most of them are on the defensive side of the football. It is going to be some backups playing on this West Virginia defense that I don't think was very good to begin with. So you tell me the backups are going to do a whole lot better. I think Memphis has a really big offensive game in this one. I probably lean the Memphis side on this one as well, but I'm more confident that because I think we see a lot of times in these bowl games that the experienced P4 team can have more success than you might expect against the defense that in some cases could shut them down. I don't think Memphis's defense has really shown that they can shut down anyone. Like, I'm not buying into what happened in that Tulane game to end the regular season. I think that was more of an aberration in just game script and some turnover luck that went their way. I think that Memphis is more than willing to let West Virginia score in this one, but I think Memphis probably outscores them. But I think we get over 56.5 pretty easily.
Yeah, I like Memphis quite a bit in this one. Memphis -2.5 for me. West Virginia, bottom 10 in coverage grade per PFF, bottom 10 in EPA per pass on defense. So I think we could see Memphis really put up points here. And I think we saw West Virginia that last game against Texas Tech. I think they lost like 52-14, something in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
I think this team is a dead team walking, coached by an interim. Usually it's iffy on how these teams respond, but I just think where this team was heading, it looks like a team that's heading for the next era. Whereas Memphis, this could kind of be tie a bow on an era where Ryan Silverfield has won every bowl game he's been in since they lost the Cotton Bowl when he was the interim against Penn State when Memphis had like a dream season. This is obviously different competition here. Memphis, they fell short of expectations this season. Still won 10 games though. This is still like a premier group of 5 team. Pretty close to West Virginia, I think, in terms of talent. So I think Memphis, all the motivation factors, all the talent edge. I like the Tigers to cover the small spread.
Oh, yeah.
Boca Raton Bowl. James Madison taking on Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky got their doors blown off in the CUSA championship game, led up 50+ to Jack State. They now take on another G5 team in James Madison, who is going to be starting backup and seldom used Billy Atkins. Alonzo Barnett, I think, banged up / hitting the portal. Cody, where are you reading into this one with JMU on a backup and Western Kentucky really kind of hitting the skids to end the season?
Yeah, I'm going with the JMU side because I think we're getting some value because of the quarterback situation. I think that the strength of JMU has honestly still been their defense. I think that their defense has been one of the better G5 units in the country. And when Western Kentucky has played a good defense this season, we've seen this offense not like typical Western Kentucky offense. What we've seen, it has been, if they're playing a G5 opponent, they're going to put up points. That's not necessarily been the case with this. And I think going up against this JMU defense, I think that JMU is just able to lay on them. I would not be surprised if we see Western Kentucky have a similar performance than what they had against Jack State in the CUSA championship game. And I think that JMU has enough talent around a backup quarterback to be able to just get a touchdown on the board and stay a touchdown ahead, lay on them.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this one. I think variance is going to be pretty high in this one. Western Kentucky, how could I forget last year when we met Caden Feldkamp? He led the 4-touchdown comeback against Old Dominion, much to my wallet's
that was a tough one, man. That was a tough
that one
beat.
sucked. But this Western Kentucky offense really fell off. Like you mentioned, JMU strength is on the defensive line. I went for the under. I could be dead wrong here because obviously with Atkins, it's kind of a question mark on how this is going to go. But my real concern is how Western Kentucky is going to score. And James Madison, pretty volatile group in general. They scored 70 against UNC. They dropped a bunch of games during Sun Belt play. So tough team that I've struggled all year to really know who they're going to be going into each game. I just went for the under. I think you see both defense, not both defenses dominate, but like I think it's more likely that Atkins is a disaster than he's the second coming of insert backup quarterback in the next Tom Brady. So I'll go for the under here. Very low confidence. This is like a low confidence one for me. If you're like in those bull pick'em pools, I guess if I had to lean aside, like I'd say James Madison, but it's tough to lay a touchdown with a backup like that.
I mean, fair. I'm not arguing with you. Yeah. This is definitely a low confidence for me.
Yeah,
if we're doing pool ratings, like, I mean, fitting for the Boca Raton Bowl, like, there's a reason these two teams are playing in Boca Raton. But like, I also think that like, I favor James Madison because if it's a game I don't have a lot of confidence in, I'm going to put all my faith and all my eggs in the basket of the unit that I have the most faith in, and that's James Madison's defense.
Okay, that's fair. LA Bowl. Cal taking on UNLV. Early action on Cal after UNLV loses head coach Barry Odom to Purdue. The expectation is offensive coordinator Brennan Merriam will also be on the move, one of the highly sought after offensive coordinators in this year's hiring cycle. Not a lot of words on opt-outs just yet, but Cody, where are you going in this one?
Yeah, obviously the coaching situation and the potential for opt-outs does worry me quite a bit in this one, but I'm going UNLV plus the 3.5. I think getting that 3 in the hook really sold me on that one just a little bit. And I'm looking at it just from a matchup perspective, trying to block out the noise and trying to block out the potential for opt-outs. I didn't do that with every one of these bowl games, as we'll get to with a couple of my picks down the road. But with this one, I look at Cal's last 2 games. Stanford was up pretty substantially on Cal in their penultimate regular season game, and it was because Ashton Daniels and his dual threat ability were able to put them in a blender a little bit defensively. Then Kevin Jennings was obviously able to do the same with his dual threat ability in the SMU game when SMU just kind of blew them out. Mendoza was obviously out of that game for Cal with an illness, not an injury. He is going to play in this game. But I think Hajj-Malik Williams can have that similar success against them. And so when I come down to that, I think this Cal offense is just a little too volatile for my liking. And so I'm going to take the 3 in the hook with UNLV. Not one of my most confident picks, but it is a game that I am excited for. So it's not the Boca Raton Bowl in terms of excitement level.
Yeah, I can't get out of my head the UNLV bowl game from last year where they got smoked by Kansas.
Yeah.
And not that I think Cal has the offensive ceiling that a Kansas from last year had, but I do like Cal in this bowl game. It's definitely ran out there to 3.5, but I could only look that way. I also think like when we get to this game, I think the line may continue to run out as we see potential opt-outs. Maybe Ricky White sits out, the premier UNLV cornerback or wide receiver. Hajj-Malik Williams, I do expect to play, but like, I don't know. I expect Marion to be gone. Odom gone. This team did have a handful of Power 4 transfers where maybe they go to the next stop on their move. So I just think like downside risk, I think that there's more downside risk on the UNLV side. So I find myself, and I think Cal, honestly, pretty known quantity, in my opinion, where I think 100%. They're going to have full attendance, keep this intact, run this out, got to bowl eligibility late in the season. I like Cal in this game.
I mean, like, I don't have strong convictions with UNLV, so I can't do that. I think like what you just said makes me wonder if we do in some of these cases, if like I tend to value that volatility a little bit more of UNLV because I think that there is inherent value if you hit. And yes, it's a little bit riskier way to play it. I'm not fully aware of that, but I'm a little bit of a risk taker. I like to roll the dice every now and then.
New Orleans Bowl, Sam Houston taking on Georgia Southern. Total at 47.5. Georgia Southern laying 6.5. The Eagles. Sam Houston, new coaching staff coming in. They also don't have their leading rusher, Jay Drucker. He's in the transfer portal. Take on Clay Helton, who is 0-2 in bowl games with the Eagles. Cody, what's your look in this game?
Well, it's about to be 1-2 because Georgia Southern minus 6.5, brother. Drucker's not the only Sam Houston player in the portal. Most of that team is in the portal, honestly, at this point. Like, it is a mass exodus from the Bearcats. And frankly, I was quick to jump on this as soon. Like, I'm happy that we're doing the show today because this line is only going to keep moving. It moved 2 points in 12 hours from when I put my picks in last night into the doc and when I was updating the doc this morning. Like, it has moved 2 points. It was at 4.5 last night. I think that Sam Houston did a great job of piecing things together and really bouncing back from a tough first year at the FBS level last year. But I think that with the talent that they're losing, it's going to be really hard for a Georgia Southern team that has been volatile, but we know what the ceiling of this team is. And I think like they're just going to have matchup advantages across the board on the field.
Yeah, I would say that my only concern is that like I think Georgia Southern's like a huge fraud. Like this was a team I was looking to fade in bowl season, but then you get a team in Sam Houston, like you said, everybody's leaving. So where do you really go with this team? You're playing in the Superdome, fast track. Sam Houston's offense kind of only big plays or nothing. Yeah. And I think we see the defense really fall off again with who's in the portal. So I went for the over. It's pretty low in the high 40s. Fast track bowl game. I think there's an avenue to a few explosive plays setting this over the total. Again, I don't really have a super crazy feel on this one. It's more that like, hey, you're playing in a dome. Maybe, you hit a few more explosives than if you're playing, middle of December in Boston or something, No,
100%. And like, honestly, the way I see this game playing out, I think both of us could win on this one because like, again, I stand by the fact that, yes, I'm right there with you. Like, I haven't bet on Georgia Southern a whole lot this year because I don't trust them. And like but I think it's all volatility. Like, it's not necessarily like they're just completely fraudulent. It's that they're fraudulent one week, and then the next week it's like, when you try to fade them, they're a lot better team. So in this matchup against Sam Houston, I do think that Georgia Southern can run out, but I also think on a fast track with Sam Houston's offensive approach that we get to the over pretty comfortably, but Georgia Southern also wins comfortably.
Yeah, I could see extended garbage time in this game where Georgia Southern has a comfortable lead, but then they kind of let Sam Houston hit a few. You see the playbook kind of opened up and stuff like that. Again, it's just a low total for a bowl game, especially considering Georgia Southern plays super fast and passes at a high rate. So you could see extra possessions and the clock stopping quite a bit.
Yeah.
Cure Bowl, Ohio taking on Jacksonville State, 2 conference winners. And we mentioned at the top, Rich Rod potentially going to West Va. We'll see. That hasn't been announced yet. That's kind of just reading the news reports and everything. But Ohio did lose their coach, Tim Albin, to Charlotte. What are your thoughts on this one in a battle between the Conference USA champ as a 2.5-point underdog against the MAC champ, Ohio?
Let me tell you that of every bowl game we're going to be talking about today, this is the one I have the worst feel on. Have no idea. But I'm going with Jacksonville State plus 2.5. Do not take that to the bank, but there's a chance that neither head coach is coaching this game that we saw throughout the year. So, that's something that's definitely in my mind. But I also think that what I came down to is I think Tyler Huff and Trey Stewart are the trump cards in this game. And Ohio did a really good job in the MAC championship game of shutting down Miami, Ohio's ability to run, putting them in a negative game script. And Parker Navarro played the game of his life. Shouts to Timothy Chalamet for recognizing that was going to be the case, apparently. But I do think that when you get down to it, Tyler Huff is a force multiplier, as is Trey Stewart in this run game. And I think it's a different beast than what we saw from Miami, Ohio, and throughout the MAC season. I think Ohio has a little bit of trouble stopping them, especially without Tim Albin, having a future there.
You make some points on Huff and Stewart. I went for Ohio, though, because both teams want to run the ball really well. The only difference is that Ohio has a really good rush defense, and Jacksonville State's rush defense isn't as good. So I laid the 2.5 with Ohio. I also think we see, while Albin is gone, and this is still a very veteran-laden Ohio team, whereas Jacksonville 100%. State, a little bit of a different type of composition of the roster if they do end up losing Rich Rod. So, again, low confidence. I think this game can go in a lot of different ways. I just went for Ohio. Team is top 25 in yards per carry allowed and EPA per rush, whereas Jacksonville State closer to the national average. So I do think you could see guys like Navarro and Tice kind of match / outperform Huff and Stewart in the quarterback run game.
No, I don't disagree. And I mean, there's a chance Tyler Huff, Rich Rod leaves, Tyler Huff hits the portal, and he's the future West Virginia quarterback. That's a world that we're.
How about Trey Stewart? Trey Stewart's a stud.
Oh yeah, 100%. We could be looking at the future West Virginia backfield right there.
Very possible, honestly. I wouldn't rule that out at all.
No, 100%. But I'm with Tempe kids here, honestly, because Jacksonville State has been, they've been cashing, they've been money a lot this year. And I also think that when you look at Ohio's run defense metrics, who are the super dangerous, especially on the level that Huff and Stewart, running combinations, quarterback, running back in the MAC. There's not a ton of them. And so I do think it is a different beast that we're going to be talking about here for Ohio.
Very fair point there. The Gasparilla Bowl, Florida taking on Tulane. Tulane, 2 straight losses end the year. Florida, handful of upsets down the stretch. Really looks like they are going to be one of the highly touted teams going into next year with quarterback DJ Lagway and head coach Billy Napier keeping his job. The Gators staying close to home, playing in Tampa Bay, taking on Tulane, laying 12.5. Tulane head coach John Summerall was a big-time, hot, trendy name in the early coaching cycle. Reaffirmed he's staying in New Orleans, but quarterback Darian Mensah, not as faithful to the program. He is in the transfer portal, visited Duke. We'll see if he ends up playing in this game. Of course, you can be in the portal and still play, which is kind of wild. But besides the point, Cody, where are you at in this one?
Lay him, man. Florida minus 12.5, because I suspect that Darian Mensah will have his next destination settled pretty soon. And I suspect that he's probably not going to be playing in this game by the time we get there. even if that wasn't the case, I think Florida just has a different caliber of athlete. And I think that this is a game where Florida and Billy Napier has every incentive to run it up because we're in transfer portal season. DJ Lagway is already making this Florida team and this Florida program an attractive place in the recruiting cycle. Let's level that up to the transfer portal. Let's make it an attractive transfer portal destination so you can live up to the hype going into the next season. I think they run it up. I think it's a DJ Lagway showcase game, and I think Florida shows really no mercy in this one to end the year on a good note, but also set themselves up better for the future and make themselves a more attractive destination.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well said. I like the Gators as well. Not when I'm looking to step in front of that train, given where Tulane's roster may be heading. Florida, they're going to lose some guys in the portal, but again, I think they could offset some of that with the higher degree of talent on the roster. Myrtle Beach Bowl. This game is actually it's Coastal Carolina UTSA. Coastal's playing at home, but most of their roster is at their own homes. Coastal down both quarterbacks that played this year. So they have no career college football pass attempts on their depth chart right now. Their top two defensive players and rated by Pro Football Focus are out. They're taking on a UTSA team that is laying 6.5 in the Myrtle Beach Bowl. Cody, what are your thoughts there?
Lay them again. UTSA minus 6.5, brother. Like, this is how's Coastal going to move the ball? I mean, that's honestly my big question. Like, this UTSA defense is not good, and I would probably look Coastal if they had either Kim or Vasco in this game, but they don't. So, like, we don't know what we're going to get from Coastal. I know that UTSA can score, especially with Coastal down several key defenders in this game. So, like, I truly just don't see a way where Coastal's able to put up a fight against the UTSA team that I don't think is great, but I do think is more than capable of taking advantage of good matchups.
Yeah, I completely agree. Nothing much here. I think UTSA closed the season on a high note, scored 28 or more in, I believe it was 5 of their last 6 games. Yeah. Really closed out strong. Owen McCown really seemed to come into his own. The UTSA defensive line should wreak havoc. Tempe Kid says UTSA scores 40 plus. Yeah, Coastal Carolina is going to struggle here. So I like UTSA to lay it on these Chanticleers. The famous Idaho Potato Bowl, Fresno State, Northern Illinois. Yuck.
Have you seen the kickoff time for this game? We need to talk about that when we're talking about yuck.
2:30 Eastern. So what is that? Is that 11:30 local or 12:30?
Oh yeah, 11:30 local time.
Yeah, I don't think that.
And we're talking
be excited to.
We're talking PM too. To be clear, we're talking PM.
Wait, 11:30 a.m. kickoff.
I thought it was PM.
No.
Oh, I misread that. I thought it was a night game, like 2:30 Eastern.
No.
Oh, okay. No. I thought it was Ultimate Sicko Mode. We're playing Midnight Madness.
No. No. I think it's 2:30 p.m. Eastern time at least.
I'm gonna have to go check myself. I might just be not able to read A and P. You're right. I apologize.
Yeah, I was just pulling it up also to make sure I wasn't crazy.
Still, 11:30 East or 11:30 local kick is not great.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's gonna be freezing cold probably in Boise. I know Illinois probably used to that. Fresno maybe not as excited about it. I went under here. Both teams really good at limiting explosives, so I think you have to drive the field, and I just don't think you see a button-up approach from either team.
No, I'm under here as well. I mean, both these offenses stink. Mikey Keene's probably not going to play in this game. He's in the transfer portal, and I think at this stage of his career, he's just looking for his next home. These offenses weren't particularly good, and I think we're going to see a lot of backups on the field for both of them. I just don't think this is going to be an offensive showcase by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, under for me. I think it's going to be a gross game. The Hawai'i Bowl on Christmas Eve. South Florida takes the long trip to Honolulu, take on San Jose State. Ken Niamalioto's return to the island, bringing his San Jose State team, number 1 passing team in the country in terms of passing play percentage, take on the fastest team in terms of seconds per play. Cody, how do you see it?
I'm going with the under 62.5, despite what you just said, because I think that without Byron Brown, this USF defense, they're sneakily, their defense has played pretty well in a very loose American, which I think inflates some of the numbers that we see there. And yes, their pace doesn't help that, but I think that the defense is something I have a lot of confidence in, especially against the San Jose State offense that, frankly, I think is a little bit smoke and mirrors and benefited a lot from playing in the Mountain West this season. And also, you throw in the travel factor for USF. I just don't think this offense is going to be able to be operating at high capacity. Yes, they might run a lot of plays, but I don't think it's going to be a lot of explosive plays. I don't think it's going to be, a well-oiled machine when you're basically 8 hours behind where you're normally, where your normal time clock is. So I think all the factors going into this game lead me to kind of go against my initial instinct to the over and take the under with a total in the 60s.
I think you're overthinking it. Over.
Probably.
Laser light show on Christmas Eve between South Florida and San Jose State. Like I mentioned, fastest team in the country against the highest pass play percentage. I also think San Jose State, their rush defense outside top 100 according to PFF. South Florida's defense, high aggression. They like to blitz. That leaves them susceptible on the back end. So I think big night for Nick Nash and Justin Lockhart. I like the over here. I think we see points go up on the board in bunches in the Hawai'i Bowl.
I'm glad to have some difference because we'd agreed on the last 4 picks.
Yeah, we have to mix it up a little bit. The Sports Bowl, Pitt Toledo. I got nothing here. I like the under. I got nothing.
I actually, this is actually one of my favorite plays. I'm with you on the under. So I'll sell you on it to get you a little bit more hyped. Yarnell is in the transfer portal. Yarnell might not play. We know Holstein's hurt. His season's over. So Pitt could be on a third-string quarterback. I didn't really care for the offense with Yarnell to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think Pitt is super limited defensively. But on the flip side of that, I do think Pitt's defense is going to cause Toledo a ton of trouble. I agree with 10P Kids that Toledo, well, maybe not totally. I don't think Toledo is garbage, but I think Toledo is not the Toledo teams we've seen in the past. I think there is a drop-off from the Toledo teams we've seen over the past 2 to 3 years to this team. I think Pitt's able to dominate them defensively. Honestly, it would not be surprising to me if this game finished 13-7 or 12-7 or something like that.
Tucker Gleason really struggled this year.
Yeah.
So I kind of that's where I went with the under because I was like, all right, I agree with your logic. I just I didn't feel as strongly. It was just more all right, I gotta write in a play here, so I'm gonna go with the under. It's kind of where my first thought went because I do think Toledo's offense can struggle, whereas their defense, it's still held up nicely over the course of the year. So I think ugly game under. I agree with Tempe Kids. I think Toledo is garbage this year. The Rate Bowl, Rutgers taking on Kansas State. Kansas State, bit short of expectations this year after a lofty goal. They were the second choice to win the Big 12. They don't even make the title game. Take on a Rutgers team. I took the points with Rutgers. I found a 7 out there. It's pretty split between 6.5 and 7. So I took 7.
Okay.
I think you look at what Rutgers did down the stretch of the schedule. They lost that game to Illinois on a crazy Hail Mary, but you take that out. They kind of closed strong after their bye week when they finally got healthy. Also, I just think Kansas State, I think you're more likely to see a drop-off in play after falling short of expectations and possibly some guys hitting the portal. Whereas Rutgers, I think you get full attendance here and you see them kind of show out. So I don't know. I don't know what the gap is really between these teams, so I took the 7.
I'm going with Kansas State. I'm going to fight you on this one. I am going to take the 6.5 that's out there,
That's
obviously. Fair. So, yeah. But I do think that when you look at this Kansas State team and you look at the portal situation, Brown, their leading receiver, has already entered the portal. Chance he doesn't play in this game. Rutgers is a good team, and I actually do agree with Tempe Kids. They are underrated, and I think they're underrated offensively. I do not think this Rutgers defense is all that good. And particularly, they rank out of the top 100 in defensive success rate against rushing attack. Okay, Kansas State is missing its top wide receiver. Kansas State is a team that wants to run the ball anyway, and now you're going up against a bad run defense. I think Kansas State is probably just able to control this game with their ability on the ground, with Avery Johnson, with DJ Giddens. I think we see a lot of that in this game. So I went with Kansas State just based on that matchup. I think it favors the Wildcats, even if we do see a drop-off.
So, Chase Field, Phoenix, Arizona. Which fan base is more likely to travel for this one, Kansas State or Rutgers?
I don't know, man. I think it might just be people looking for something to do on a weeknight.
I think you're more likely to see the State University of New Jersey show out pretty nicely here for their Scarlet Knights.
Get out of the cold climate, go take a trip to Arizona.
Listen, it's a thing. A lot of people from Jersey go to Florida around Christmas time. Maybe they pivot and go to Scottsdale and Phoenix for the time being and enjoy the Rutgers bowl game. I'm telling you, don't sleep on
I can't believe you just told me I was overthinking something and you're talking about people from New Jersey.
I think an underrated part of handicapping bowl games is where is the game being played and who can get some people showing out for them. It's not everything, but I do think that you could potentially get a sneaky home field advantage.
I don't disagree with you in a lot of situations, but neither of these teams are close to Scott's. Like, I think I'm not going to
boots on the ground. I am a Jersey native. We travel.
I guess
to warm weather cities in the winter.
I'm not arguing that fact. First off, I lived in North Carolina, which is like the in between, and we got like the in betweeners of Florida who like didn't want to like. New Yorkers who didn't want the full warm climate of Florida, they'd come to North Carolina because it's a little bit warmer. So
we got Tempe kids also, another verifying my theory. Lots of Big Ten love in Arizona. His dad lives there. Tempe kids giving us the scoop.
All I'm saying, and I can't believe this is the thing we're getting most heated about on this show, but
I will be tuned in.
I think that the Rutgers fan base, I'm not going to disagree with you that the Rutgers fan base will outnumber the Kansas State fan base. I'm just saying that I think it's going to be a largely empty Chase Field.
What's going to crack me up is when it's like Matthew Barry and Dan Mullen talking, and Matthew Barry comes on like they're doing like the pregame kicking. He's like, wow, Dan, real big Rutgers contingency coming out to Chase Field tonight. Like the Rutgers faithful has shown out in swarms today.
Oh my God. I mean, you know what? If it happens, just at me on Twitter and let me know.
I will, and watch Purple Monsoon at the game. Anyway, we turn our attention to the highly sought after bowl game, the 68 Ventures Bowl between Arkansas State and Bowling Green. Bowling Green early was laying over a touchdown, but money has come in on the Red Wolves. Cody, what's your thought here?
I'm going with the Red Wolves. I like the money coming in there, and I'm going to throw some of my money in there as well. I didn't do a like very deep handicap of this, but my read on this situation is that we will see Harold Fannin Jr. opt out of this game. And if you take Harold Fannin Jr. out of this Bowling Green offense, I don't think it's anything special. Meanwhile, Rayner in this Red Wolves offense, they've really started to find their groove and come on as of later in the season. I think that's enough to get them past Bowling Green. And even if they don't win outright, keep it within this number.
I just think, I don't know what the difference is between these teams. Bowling Green said Harold Fannin's going to play. He's like 20 some odd yards off the single season tight end record. I wouldn't surprise me if he plays, gets the record, and sits.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I think there's more downside for Bowling Green. This one, again, it's like, I love Bowling Green all year, and especially as like an underdog role against these better teams. But as a big favorite, I don't know. I think there's a lot of variance in this game. Arkansas State winning this game wouldn't surprise me at all. If you get Arkansas State's best, they're just as good as Bowling Green.
I mean, you know, they say chaos is bred in the 68 Ventures Bowl. That's what I've always heard my entire life.
Throw out the rule books in the 68 Ventures Bowl. We're getting wild in this one. The Armed Forces Bowl, we got Navy taking on Oklahoma. 8.5, 44.5. Oklahoma. I might be playing running back at this point, quarterback, offensive line. I might just be rotating in and out. They got everybody in the portal. Navy, they play this week, obviously. Blake Horvath set to play in that game. We'll see how healthy he looks. What are you thinking in this one? Bowl game this is after Christmas. This is like the 27th.
Yeah, I'm thinking under 44.5 for everything you reason. No offense, Reed, but I don't trust you playing running back in a FBS college football game at this point. I think that the Oklahoma defense has been its calling card all year. It's been the only good thing about this team. And you go up, you have multiple weeks to prepare for the triple option. I don't expect them to be caught off guard by the triple option attack of Navy. I think they're able to shut it down pretty routinely. I do not trust the Oklahoma offense without Jackson Arnold to do a damn thing. So, I just think that under is a really safe play here. I think this is an ugly game, a lot of disjointed possessions. 24 might even be a little strong for me, Tempe kids. I think this could be like a 16-3 game.
I agree with you on the under, but I went for the Navy side.
Okay.
Your points are well noted about like time to prep and stuff, but I don't know, man. This is like different with a bowl game. Like, I don't think the practices are as hard. I don't think you got guys locked in, especially with the emergence of the portal. I think like this is one where an offense like the triple that Navy's going to run can really kind of wreak some havoc here. And like, yeah, Oklahoma's more talented than Navy by a pretty significant margin, but I don't know. Bowl games, it's more art than science here. I kind of just I just took the points.
I don't hate it. I know I just said 16-3, but like, I think the under and Navy covering are very like pretty correlated because I think Navy can keep it close because I don't think Oklahoma can do anything offensively.
And I don't see, first of all, Jackson Arnold's in the portal. Hawkins isn't yet. We'll see if he goes, but I just don't trust Oklahoma laying points, especially against one where like Navy scores like 1 9-minute drive. All of a sudden, like this game completely turned. Like if they go up 7-0 after the first quarter, like this game is completely different. I just don't know if Oklahoma is going to be able to rip off explosive. We haven't seen it all year.
No, 100%. And like Navy's defense, like, yes, Oklahoma might be more talented, but Navy's defense isn't bad. Navy has a good defense. They're well coached. This is a good Navy team. So like, this isn't a Navy team that barely snuck into a bowl game either. Like this is a good Navy team.
Yeah. I also think I'm pretty confident I know what I'm going to get from Navy, where Oklahoma, again, like
who the hell
you
knows?
can get like a total egg effort and like it won't really matter.
Yeah, 100%. And like I that's absolutely in play with what we've seen from Oklahoma this year. Like I think beating Alabama was their Super Bowl and they've kind of packed it in since then.
Yeah. The Birmingham Bowl, two teams that I think everybody on planet Earth circled to play on in bowl season, they got matched up against each other. Georgia Tech taking on Vanderbilt. Birmingham Bowl, Georgia Tech laying 2.5, total 52.5. Where are you at on this one, Cody?
This is a tough one because I think you're right. Like you can make your case for either side. I went with Georgia Tech as the favorite. And honestly, a big reason for that was the attrition that we've seen on Vanderbilt's roster. I think like if this was a fully healthy Vanderbilt team and maybe they do get a bit healthier, I think I would probably be on the door side because I betting against Diego Pavia is against my religion. And so like, I think that I would probably be on that side, but we've seen this Vanderbilt team just kind of lose one piece after another, not like mass injuries, but enough pieces where they don't have the depth to keep up. Georgia Tech, relatively healthy. I think Haynes King is going to be able to cause them a lot of problems. And then the other big factor in this, Georgia Tech's pass rush has been a little bit dangerous. And I'm totally blanking on his name, but the Vanderbilt tackle is in the portal, may not play in this game. And I think that could be a really big factor for Pavia in this one.
This is tough. This is like choosing between your kids, but
Right.
I took Vandy with the 2.5.
Okay.
Whoever was the underdog was going to get my money in this one. So I just don't think there's much separating these teams. And I think you got Singleton already in the portal for Georgia Tech. Even in the Georgia game, Haynes King struggled to throw the ball at a high clip. It was more like timely shots down the field. So I wonder if Vandy's defensive line is wise to it with prep. I think you're going to get pretty hard effort from both teams. But that being said, I like Brent Key as a big underdog, not as a favorite. So like a lot of the factors that I like to think about when I think about these two teams led me to taking the points for the Vanderbilt. But I think, this should be a fun football game.
Absolutely. It's one of the bowl games I am most excited for sure. I mean, like, love both of these teams, love watching both these teams. And like, it's very much a Spider-Man meme game, like, because neither of these offenses are traditional offenses. Haynes King can't really run a traditional offense. Diego Pavia sure as hell can't run a traditional offense. So, it's going to be whichever team comes up with the most plays. So I'm excited for it.
We got 3 more bowl games to get to. Let's motor through them. Texas Tech, Arkansas, Liberty Bowl. What do you got?
Give me the over 60.5 in this one. I just think that Texas Tech, I still don't trust the defense, still trust the offense though. And I think Arkansas, when you see a lot of these SEC teams in these bowl games, we see the defense make a lot of business decisions. But I do think the offense will still be able to cook. I think Petrino will have more than enough ways to dice up this Texas Tech defense. So I like the over in this one.
Yeah, I went for Texas Tech catching 3, mainly because we've already seen Arkansas, a bunch of guys in the portal. Got Luke Haas, their top tight end. You got 2 starting offensive linemen and 2 defensive starters already in the portal. Texas Tech, while Taj Brooks could opt out of this game and maybe that sends us into flux, I just think you're more likely to see a full effort at this point. So
yeah,
took the points. I don't hate your overlook at all.
No, 100%. Like I think Texas Tech wants, like, that's the game script they want is the over. So like if I'm on the over, then I like the Texas Tech side a little bit as well.
I'm also just not sure why is Arkansas laying points, right? Like I don't really know. Game should probably just be a pick until like there's further opt-out news. Holiday Bowl, Syracuse, Washington State. Washington State, they lose their OC, likely a handful of offensive players to the transfer portal. Their defense, they could have been in the portal since week 1 because the defense is absolutely terrible. They finished the season on a 3-game losing streak, 3 straight double-digit favorites, all outright losses. Syracuse head coach Fran Brown says everyone's playing in the bowl game. We'll see if that holds true or not. But what's your thought on this one, Cody?
Big day for Kyle McCord coming up. Syracuse minus 6.5. I just think that this Washington State defense, even if it wasn't, I'm with you. I expect we see more Washington State players enter the portal. Even without that, I would probably still lay them with Q's in this one. But just because I think that this offense and the high octane that we've seen from it and the ability to win shootouts, I just think is going to absolutely favor the orange in this one.
Yeah, with the information I have now, got to take Syracuse laying the points. Not usually a team I like laying points with, but given the circumstances where Washington State's at, Syracuse should be able to pick apart the Wazoo defense. And our final bowl game for today, this is the nightcap on December 27th. It's USC Texas A&M in the Las Vegas Bowl. What do you think?
I'm over 51.5, and this is one where I am projecting some opt-outs. I think that we see the A&M defense suffer a lot of opt-outs. Shamar Stewart's already declared for the NFL draft. I suspect he is not the last player that will not be playing in this bowl game. USC is going to have Jade Maeva. They're going to have some weapons on the outside who are not draft eligible, won't opt out of this bowl game. So I think that we see USC's offense have more success than they would have against a full-strength Texas A&M defense. And on the flip side, I don't think USC's defense is going to have a chance in hell of stopping Marcel Reed, frankly.
Yeah, this just seems like just a whacked out game. I just like a stupid game. Explosives everywhere, no tackling, business decisions, trick plays. I see like all of it up in the air here. So I joined you on the over. I think like it's just gonna be like a stupid game. So A&M, USC over 51.5. I'm with you. For the sake of my lungs, we're not going to recap all those picks, but if you want to go back and hear them, just go tap through. I'm sure after the show, the ace producer, Joanne, will segment up each bowl game because she's the best. And if she wasn't planning on doing that, I unfortunately put that on her. But we will be back next week to talk first round playoffs and some more bowl games. We're going to recap some of the other bowl games. We'll talk some Heisman Trophy fallout after the awards announced on Saturday. So we will be back different time than usual. If you watch live, Tempe kids, I'm talking to you. 11 a.m. Eastern on Wednesday. We will be back to talk Stacking the Box College Football Edition, and we will have a modified holiday schedule that we'll update you with as the show moves through bowl season. Before we get out of here, Tempe Kid says, better take the over in Notre Dame, Indiana before it goes up. We'll see where the total's at next Wednesday when we're back again. Wednesday, 11 a.m. For Cody Williams, I'm Reed Wallach. Enjoy the beginning of bowl season, and we'll see you next week.
We'll see you.